彼の残した言葉の中にもあるんですが、いい写真を撮るための最初の条件、これはカメラを持っていることだと。彼が一番思考していたのは、多くの人にいかに写真を撮ってもらうか。
1960年代に前谷さんというオリンパスの技術者がいましてね。
カメラが当時はまだ高級品なので、前谷さんをはじめとする開発の方々が多くの人に使ってもらうにはどうしたらいいかって考えた中で、カメラ自体をもっと安く作りたい。
当時6000円で作れないかっていうふうにできたカメラです。
そして当時高かったフィルム代、現像代を少しでも負担を減らしたい。そうしたらハーフサイズのカメラを作ろう。そうすると倍撮れるのですごく経済的です。
で 35mm カメラの24枚だと48枚撮れます。それが非常に画期的だということで、使われた。ペンが出た時にオリンパスを持って家族写真を撮ったりなんかする人が非常にいましたですね。
主にプロを中心として使う機材が変わってきていた。なるべくいいものを作ろうと各社していて、どうしても大きくなってしまっている。その中で前谷はやっぱりプロが本当に求めるものってそういうことなのかっていうことに疑問を感じて、その中で生まれたのが OM1 だと考えています。
結局彼がこれ集大成なんですね。やっぱりかなり命が吹き込まれたカメラではないかなっていうふうに僕は思います。
When I got into the newspaper business, it was just coming off the time when 2.25 was kind of the equipment preferred. The guy that hired me came from the speed graphic day, the 4x5. As technology progressed, all of a sudden it was accepted that 35mm was great for newspaper work. It's not as physically imposing as a larger camera. The more I become invisible, the more I can become part of the scene, the more the photographic opportunities present themselves to me. The camera, it becomes a productive tool. It's there for a purpose. Maitani realized that, and that drove the original design of the OM. When you put it in your hand, everything was where you wanted it to be. The aperture's right here. My two front fingers take care of that. Other fingers fall back to the shutter speed. It's an enabler, it's a conduit, not an interference between you and what's happening.
1996年にオリンパスは最初の民生品のデジタルカメラを出したわけですけれども、フィルムであろうとデジタルであろうとないものを作るというのは全社共通で、今でも一番ベーシックなところに流れているのではないかなと考えます。
デザインを検討するときにスケッチを書いて最初検討して、その次にですね 3D データを入れてからこのようなラフな削りのモデルを作ります。でこれをベースにボタンの位置が適切であるかとか、あるいはグリップ性能はこれでいいかとかっていうのを検討していくんですけれども、我々が一番に考えていることはやはり使われる方、ユーザーのことです。
There's certainly an emotional connection with your camera. As soon as you pick it up, you know, you have a feeling. It's the design, it's how it looks, and it's how it's going to support you in achieving the image that you want to capture. Size and portability and mobility in photography is a message that we've been talking about for decades. The philosophy of the Olympus cameras is being able to shoot everywhere. We had a photographer go to Antarctica, and obviously you've got crazy low temperatures there. We created technology that enables them to do that. If you were that customer, what would the end solution be that you would want? It's important to always be thinking about what do people need, what are they going to need, what's the future going to be, and to aspire to deliver that.
災害に遭われた方が取り戻したいものの最も大事なものの一つがやっぱ写真なんですね。それって単なる現像された紙ではなくて、その当時の家族の思い出がやはりそこに残っているってみんなが思うので、思い出を取り戻したいという気持ちがあると思うんです。つまり写真にはそれだけの力があると 思っています。
I've got a photograph of our son. I think he was a year old. It's got the catch light in his eyes. Wonderful moment in getting ready to tap the glass. It's not a great photograph, but it's a great moment. Wow, look at that. I remember that. Oh, look at this. You know, raising your kids, the pains and the struggle and the exhaustion and the joys and all these things that occur. What a wonderful confirmation it is of you as a human. This is who we are and who we were.
今でもそのものを作るにあたってはお客様の声というのをすごく大事にしています。マイタリが残した言葉の一つに、我々はカメラを開発提供しているんではなくて、カメラを通じて人々が幸せになることを提供しているんだっていう言葉があります。ないから作る、その精神というのを日々実現しようと、これこそが社会に対するオリンパスの役割だと思っています。
Good day, good day, good day, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are, and welcome back to my live stream. I'm super excited today because this is unlike any other live stream that I've done before, because this particular live stream is going to be an educational one. It is going to be very specific about something that I do as a professional photographer for the last 16, 17 years now. It's about portraiture, right? And you've seen I've done a few videos about portraits, and the links in the video descriptions. So if you haven't checked them out, you are very welcome to, and I would highly suggest you to, because I have speaking from my personal experience and about using different focal lengths to do portraits. So because traditionally, when you talk about portraiture in photography specifically, many people would talk, usually just referring to, get a portrait lens. It's going to be in micro four thirds, you're going to be like 45, 50, maybe even 75 millimeters. In full frame would be 85, 90, 120, 125, whatever, the longer focal length, basically from medium tele to long tele as a portrait focal length. But there isn't such a rule, to be quite honest, and like I demonstrated in my videos, I have used primarily wide angle to do my portraits. I already spoke about the reason about it, but I can also reiterate and also reinforce the idea in this particular video, in this particular live stream. Hopefully that you will learn something, and hopefully that you take some points back home and to improve your portraiture. So yeah, it's very kind of very specific, and of course, for those who are new to this channel, that I'm a micro four thirds photographer, but I have been a professional photographer for 16, 17 years now, and I started with film cameras and then moved on to digitize myself. My whole workflow became digitized with Canon full frame cameras, and I eventually switch and transition into micro four thirds about 6 years ago professionally. So I have a vast amount of experience using different formats, so you're very welcome to ask me any question. If you want to know something, you want to ask something, I already pinned a comment in the chat box there, so all you need to do is to highlight my initial red 35. I think you have to use the @ sign red 35, and you'll be highlighted in red, so I'll be able to see your comment when I come back to it later on. So just to say hello to everybody, I can see that quite a few people already are coming in, so that's really good to see. It's not going to be a very popular topic, obviously, because everyone shoots slightly different things. So I guess that people who are tuning in today are those who are keen to learn a little bit more about portraits, but it's all good, it's all I do. So I'm very happy to share my own experience and also my techniques. I also, if the computer can handle it, what I'll also do is do one live demo on how I edit photos. I know that a lot of you guys have been asking me for this for years, ever since I started this channel, because every time I posted some portraits, every time I posted some sample photos for my videos, some of you will leave me a comment, basically, oh, how can you show me how you edit your photo? Can you show me how you do this and that? So today I want to try to use one example. If this is successful, I may do some more in the future, so you can see how I do things and how things has changed over time. Because today, the one sample that I want to highlight, it will be using the Adobe Lightroom Classic, the latest version, together with Pure Raw. And I also show you how I'm going to utilize some of the new features in Lightroom since 2021, because it's actually some fantastic stuff that you can re-explored and to some of your older photograph, because it's quite amazing what you can do with some of your old raw files. Because the one that I'm showing you right now is actually from my Pen F, so it's an older camera, and you can see how much I can process it to make it look, I would say, decent. It's not a professional one. It's just a photograph of my son, and I was testing one of the Laowa lenses last year, so I shot that on my Pen F, and so I'm using that particular photo as my example, and just to show you guys how I edit, my particular palette. I think palette of colors and things like that. I do use some sort of plugin, so you can see my entire thing basically. So there's no secret there. I'm sharing everything out, so hopefully that you can learn a thing or two. So, like I said, first of all, welcome back to my live stream, and let's start it with today's topic. So for those of you, I already spoke about focal length, and there is no such a thing as portrait focal length in photography. You can use 17 millimeters, you can use 25, you can use 45, you can use 75 in micro four thirds terms. So if you want to work out about full frame, just double whatever numbers that I just mentioned. So it'll be 35, 50, 80, 90, and then 150, and this sort of focal lengths. Yeah, I can use any focal length to do things, but all depends on what I want to do for my portraiture. A lot of the times when I use wider focal length is that I want to absorb environment in short, just to give the subject a little bit more of the storytelling side of it, and also to give a bit of context within the photograph, so you can see what he is like, or what he or she is like, and what sort of thing they do. It's more what we usually call it the environmental portraits, and so you can see actually this character, the story behind him or her. Then when you're starting to narrow the angle of view, or using slightly longer focal length, then you're putting more and more emphasis onto the subject, him or herself. So like you basically, like if you do wide angle, you basically see everything behind the subject, and then as you narrow down the angle of view, you can see that it's drawing more and more attention towards the actual subject itself. And so when you use super tele, well, not super tele, but tele lenses, like and you go up to 75 millimeters or 150 in full frame, you are getting really tight, and in that instance you are really doing a headshot, or more like shoulder and headshot. You can of course do full length, you just have to walk quite far away to do that. If you can still do that, just because by using longer focal you can compress the background and the subject, so it's just a very different kind of look. So the whole idea about portraiture is that there is no such a rule about certain focal length. You just have to determine what type of style, what type of thing you want to portray the person that you're photographing, what's the thing you want to include into the frame itself. I have some example that I'm going to show you today, and then go through like my thought process, why I do such a photograph, and why do I underexpose or overexpose certain thing, why do I angle it such a way, why do I compose it that way, or even like why do I choose such a location for particular shots. And so today is really going to be a full-on educational thing, and I'm hoping that some of you will see how I work in my mind, whenever I take a photograph, because it's really difficult to say something in the video terms. And I mean, I could easily make a 3 hours long feature-length movie just to talk about portrait, like I mentioned in my previous video. It's going to be really hard. So hopefully this sort of live stream thing that I will be able to explain more in detail, and you can also ask me, so it will be interactive, and so you'll be able to ask me things while I'm going along. So let's have a look at some of the photographs that I have for you guys, and just to give you an idea, and also I'm going to highlight the lenses that I use for those photographs, so you can actually ask me any question you would like. So first of all, this particular shot here, And let me just angle it so I'm actually so I can get the photograph slightly better. Right, okay. So you can see that this particular photograph here is I actually did it for a singer, and so this particular shot was included in her album, kind of one of this booklet thing, on the CD. I don't know if they still do that, but anyway, she asked me to do that, and so we went into a forest, as you can see, in the woods, and to do this shot. It was a very cold day. I have to basically give credit to her that she's very brave. That wearing just a very skimpy dress in like freezing cold weather. She's like, she's the best. But yeah, for this particular shot, before we even went to the forest to do this shoot, we had a discussion. We had a lot of brainstorming. We had a lot of idea exchanges, talking about what sort of things she's going for, what sort of music she's doing, and what kind of songs she's singing. So like, it's a lots of things going on behind every single shot I did, especially for my paid clients, because they have a specific requirement most of the time, and then I need to make sure that I deliver. It's not like you just go for a snapshot. Is very, very different, because when you're doing for a paid job, you know that you cannot fail, otherwise your clients won't come back to you. So like, as a professional, I need to make sure that I deliver. To me, I always try to over deliver, because that to me, I want to set myself really high standard to make sure that I can deliver that type of quality. So this particular shot was shot with the 35-100 f2 Zuiko lens, the old 4-3, not the micro 4-3 lens, right? And so I for that particular, I don't know why, I like to use that lens for the tele range, because it's got a very special look to it, which I really enjoy using. Although most of the time these days I use the 40-150 f2.8 Pro. It's just slightly more clinical, slightly sharper in a way, and obviously it works natively with all the micro four thirds cameras, especially in CAF. The 35-100 f2 Pro, however, is still a very, very good portrait lens in my standards. The only problem is that thing's humongous. It's super heavy. It's just like not a micro four thirds lens whatsoever. It's just a really horrible big lens. But in terms of image quality, in terms of the actual rendering of the images, is brilliant. It's brilliant. I kind of sidetracked a little bit. Let's go back to the discussion about this particular photo. So the she wanted this a bit more mysterious. She was kind of because in one of her songs in the album, and it was about she's lost, and this is why they can see that in this particular photograph here, you can see that she's looking for directions, and so like there's a lot of directions there as well, and just to coincide with what she had in her album, in her song, in her lyrics. So it's every time I do something like this, it takes hours to plan a lot of these things. And also, don't forget that these are outdoor shoots as well. Even though we plan a day, we may have to cancel if the weather doesn't permit us to do certain things. But lucky it was. However, like I said, it was really cold that day, and but we did ask her, do you want to reschedule it because it's really cold, and because of the deadline of the albums and everything like that. So we had to go ahead to do these shoots, and for me, it's okay. I can dress like a puffy penguin, whatever, but she is really the one had to endure the cold to do this particular shoot. We stayed outside for about 2 hours. I'll show you another shot there, which is in the same series, for about 2 hours. But that was the maximum she could endure, because it's like you cannot stand in the cold in this sort of like skimpy dress for too long. And I did use a couple of remote trigger flash to lighten up, because you can see that it's very dark in there. I also deliberately underexposed a little bit as well, just to infuse the mood into it, and also use the speed light remote trigger to blast a little bit of fill light into her body, so you can see the dress a little bit better. And of course, in post production, I'll do my magic, and which I'm going to show you a little bit later, to lighten up a little bit, get even more mood into it, to create this sort of look. But you can see that these sort of portraits I do, not only just for normal clients, but also for like kind of very specific art directed project for my paid clients, which is actually very cool in a way. I mean, I enjoy this sort of thing. It's all fun when you have a directive, when you have an idea that you need to satisfy. in a way, it actually makes my life a little bit easier because if let's say I go out to do a family shoot and or do a couple shoot, yeah, if they're not professional, if they haven't got any commercial experience, for instance, it's entirely up to me, which is good. I have the total control of everything. But then again, I have to rely on my own creativity to do everything, right, from beginning to the end. But when you have a commercial project like this, you have a direction. You have some certain things that you have. Basically, they give you a list of boxes to tick. And in that case, for me, as long as they tick those boxes, I'm basically can satisfy their requirements. So when you have a directions, it's obviously a lot easier than you have to just think freestyle, and which most of the time when I do that when I with my pay couples and things like that who are not commercially related in that sense. So this is perfectly okay. I totally enjoy doing this type of shoot. So this is also shot with the 35 to 100 f2 approach, shot at 35. Still, so in full frame time, it's still 70 millimeters. So she was quite small in the frame. That means I was actually shooting quite far away from the from her. The only reason I use a longer tele lens instead of using a wide angle lens in this particular case is because I want to compress the scene a little bit more to get a little bit more of the bush, behind her, closer to her. This is all about aesthetic, and I mean, I could easily just be about 5 feet away from her and use a 17 millimeters. I can do that. But the problem is, you can see all the tree branches, the background will be smaller, much smaller if I don't use the tele lens. It's all because of the compression. It's all about the angular views and the depth of field. So it's something that you as a photographer have to make sure that you can satisfy that kind of visual in your head. But it's no harm to try and error. And sometimes I do that myself. When I go to a location, I will swap a couple of lenses, take a few test shots just to see whether it's worthwhile using that particular lens for that particular shot, for instance. And sometimes I'll change a couple of them in between, just to get a different feel of it. To see when I get back to the office, I would just want to see which one works best. So it happens. But as you go along, as you become more experienced and you start to know what type of look you want to go for, and by then you'll be experienced enough. When you turn up to the location with a client, you will know exactly which lens you want to pick up. So this will build up over time, so you don't have to worry about that if you're just starting out. Try and error is probably the best thing to get used to a certain focal length, for instance. Just like any photography, the more you shoot, the better you get, and the more experience you gain, and the more understanding you become, about yourself as a photographer, as well as the actual photo shoot itself. So the next photograph I want to show you is the contrary. So it's not using the Zuiko lens. I'm going to use the M Zuiko lens, which is the micro four third lens, and again it's going to be a telezoom. This is a 42-150 f2.8 Pro, and so this is a very simple lens, and I love using this particular lens, especially using for CAF to do some kind of candid look to the actual photograph itself. So this one, I did ask her to do things for me, like basically look around and then look back to me. All I wanted to do is to capture that natural flow of her, and so like whatever she's standing in this particular frame there, she wasn't even posing, so it's not a static shot, she's actually moving. So what I do, just use the CAF with the face detect enable. That allows me to track her fairly quickly, and while she's moving away from the lens, and I just basically wait for that moment when she slowly turn around, and I just capture it. Some people did ask me that, do you use Pro Capture to do that sort of thing? And because you don't know when she's going to turn around. Well, you have. I said no, because otherwise you'll be like having 60 frame, something like that, like continuously. That's waste of memory cards and batteries and all the other stuff. So no, I don't do that. But what I will do is to anticipate. I look at her. I mean, I have to be very focused and look at her body language. You know when the person is going to turn, just by looking at her shoulder and how she moves, like left and right and things like that. And so over time, you actually get used to it. You would see, the sudden kind of hesitation in moving the legs, that's when she wants to turn, and then and when she will swing her shoulder slightly more to one side, and you know that will be the moment, and then you will probably start clicking a couple of frames there. So you probably, instead of having pro capture like 40-50 frame to capture that perfect frame, I just set it to sequential low, so 10 frames per second, and then I wait for her to turn, and as soon as she's starting to turn, and I see that movement I just mentioned about the shoulder and her hip, and then I will start clicking. So I'll probably end up with about 5 to 6 shots to get this particular frame here. So it's not huge quantity. This is not about your experience. You know, if for people who are not experienced, they probably just press and hold the shutter and just machine gun the whole thing, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just that you're creating more work for you than necessary, and you might end up, when you load the images up to Lightroom, you probably find that there will be like hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of photos to go through, and you know, for me, I don't like that, and I don't like to have too many frames at one go. Just it really is confusing, and also it shows that you're inexperienced in that case. So for me, I just wait for the right moment to click the shot. As you know, this is so very similar to any other genre in photography. You don't want to overdo it, overkill it for everything you do. I mean, I've been to weddings as a guest, and I saw some. I would presume that they're beginner photographers, because there are so many, I would call it the beginner errors that they make, and but all I could hear was the shutter sound, you know. And this is a few years better when people were still using a lot of DSLRs, so all I could hear was like machine gunning the whole wedding. And I don't know how many shots they were doing, and they're probably like in the high thousands. Yeah, I'm talking about 8,000-9,000 shots. Yeah, I could easily think about that, because the whole entire wedding, all I could hear was that shutter clicking, and they must be clicking so many shots. I mean, I've never seen anything that anybody do that, and these days it's probably harder to tell. People might be using silent shutters, so I don't even know how many shots they do. But for me, for any particular weddings, I don't usually go through. I don't usually shot over 2.5. It will be like really maximum, and I don't usually have that high numbers, and so I'm trying to watch my shot, anticipate the shot that I want, and just click it whenever I need. I don't try to make a movie from photographs, if you know what I mean. Okay, and so let's look at the next one here. And so this particular shot is 42.5 Nocticron from Panasonic, and so I didn't have this lens. I borrowed it at the time, and just to do the review for YouTube. So this particular shot was shot, for those of you who've been following me long enough, you know who this lady is. She's Charlie. So like, we photographed this in Spitalfield Market. I think it's just behind Spitalfield Market. So this is a very popular portrait lens, and because this sort of focal length are primarily marketed as portrait, but for me it's just a lens. And but I use this particular one to show a slightly more flatter angles, and so you can actually see the nature of the lens in a way that it doesn't distort the subject too much, especially in the face. So when you use a slightly longer focal length, and the more natural it becomes, because when you wider focal length, you just have to work with the distortion a lot more than usual, because don't forget, if you use a wide angle to do close up, you will see your subject face a bit more bulging forward, and so you have to be ever so slightly more careful and the distance, and because the closer you are, the more distortion you're gonna get. So bear that in mind. And 42.5 usually for this sort of distance, like half length shot, is perfect for that sort of natural look. You don't want it to be over exaggerated certain things, so that's why that is probably the primary reason why that all these 42.5 are the focal length to be marketed as a portrait, and full frame would be 85 and 90 millimeters. So they all have the similar characteristics, and which is actually totally cool. And I do use 45. It's not my primary focal length, like I mentioned in my previous videos. And my primary focal length is actually 35 or 17 in micro four third, and also 25. These are the two main focal lengths that I use for portraits. 45 is like an ever so just occasional use. I don't use it a lot because it crops out too many things, and for me, I like to highlight my clients where they are, and also more about the characters more than actually just the look. Those would be for headshots, for profile shots, and if I do commercial clients like for offices, headshot and things like that, and then use a 45 focal length. Otherwise, I tend to use a wider focal length just to get as much story as or characters as possible for that particular shot. So I could already see a couple of questions here. Let me just pause a little bit here. I'll leave Charlie's here because I know you guys like Charlie. I'll leave Charlie here, and then I would let's go through a couple of questions here. Oops. Sorry, I just banged my mic. Okay, so hello there. So I saw a couple of people say hi. Hi, Marco. Hi, Thorn. And someone say love that video. Which video are you talking? Oh, yeah, the portrait video. Thank you. Romain from southwest of France. Hello. Bonjour. Jerry, Mac, hi Jimmy, can I use the 75mm 1.8? Of course you can use one. Okay, just bring, oops. And sorry, let me go back here. Where is it? I'm just trying to find your comment now, sorry. So Jerry, you're saying, can I use 75? Yeah, I mean, totally. And I said it in my videos, there is no reason why you can't use any focal length to do portraits. And it's all really depending on what you want to achieve at the end. 75 is really good. If you want to see some sample shot, I think I may have some in a minute. When I did the review for the 75 1.8 in my channel, you can actually go and check out the video. You can see the type of photograph you should be expecting using such a long focal length. And you will get really shallow depth of field for start, and also very tight angular view. So like you need a lot of space to work with. So if you have that space, it's totally fine. 75 is actually a very good portrait lens. To me, for that sort of focal length, it will be a very good headshot lens. And because if you're looking at full frame, this is 150, so it's really, really long. I'm not saying you can't be done. A lot of people use 150 before to do portraits, and because you do get a very special look when you use such a long focal length. Like I said, the longer it is, the more compressed the scene is, and so that's why you're giving a very surreal look to it. Because things just got squashed together. The background and the foreground got really close to the subject, so the whole thing just kind of looked very, very different. And so if you like that look, like that perspective, and you have the space to work with the lens, and the 75 is an awesome lens to use as a portrait lens. So let's. Mr. Finch, just bought the EM5 Mark III. Been looking at a lot of your lens review, and you're welcome. EM5 Mark III is a fantastic camera, and I really, really loved it. I still have it, and I still use it a lot for different things. And I don't know if you follow my Instagram, and not the Jimmy Cheng one that I have up here. Where is it? This way, not up here. It's my Red 35 Instagram, and you can see that I've been using the EM5 Mark III in the last couple of days. Yeah, it's a camera that I really enjoy using because it's so small. Right, it's really tiny. This is what Michael Four Thirds is all about, right? I know the OM1 is fantastic. It's really cool, new, feature packed, fast, whatever. The best ever Michael Four Thirds camera. But the EM5 Mark III, it just had that magic, right? It just got that really compact body that allows me to travel anywhere with such a small, lightweight setup, and I can still do everything that I do. To be honest, there's nothing to stop me from them using that for my commercial jobs. It's weather seal, right? And everything is as good as ever. Yeah, it's awesome. So I'm glad that you enjoy it, and thank you for watching my videos. Okay, and Michael, you're the best. Thank you. Klaus from Austria, hello. Right, okay, you got something here, XH1, you're using Fuji, is it? 85 VF 1.8 autofocus equals 127.5 on my Fuji XH1 crop sensor. Well, yeah, I mean, if you work it out like that, it's similar to what Jerry was saying, using a 75 1.8 and a Michael 430, you kind of get almost similar focal length 150 to compared to your 127, let's say 130, so it's not much difference there. It's pretty long, like I mentioned, that it's not it's not impossible to do portraits like this, but for me, because if I go and shoot, I mean, unless like what I just showed you earlier, if I'm in the forest, if I have all the space to work with, yeah, this sort of focal length is brilliant. It's really cool. But a lot of the time I shoot in the city, in London, and then or even if I go to a wedding, for instance, you know, you don't have that space. You're in a venue, you're usually very squashed, very tight, and I just simply don't have that sort of space for me to work with such a long focal length. So this is why that is less used in my case, and but if for a lot of people, if they have a long studio, big studio to work with, and yeah, these are totally workable solutions here. Gabrielle, hi, and I used the Lumix 35 to 100 2.8 for this, and the AF is not the best, but the lens quality is really good. Good, interesting. I mean, very interesting. You mentioned about AF, and I know I also mentioned about AF earlier for the CAF face tracking kind of thing, for that candid moment. But what I want to say is that AF is actually not fairly critical in portraiture, because majority of the time they are fairly static, and you don't need good AF to do good portrait, if that makes sense. And because unless you are going for that kind of candid, spontaneous look, and then you just use eye tracking, face tracking, whatever, you know, to capture that motions and dynamic from the character, from the subject or talent. Otherwise, you know, I can even use manual focus or to do that sort of portraits. This is, I guess, it's changing nowadays, because you see a lot of the YouTubers online, and you see people basically have everything auto, and they turn on eye face detect, they have a human subject on, and then CAF continuous burst. They just shoot while the subject is moving around and things like that. I'm not entirely sure that would be my preferred way to shoot portrait, because you, first of all, like I mentioned, you're basically machine gunning the whole session. You might end up with a few dozen shots just to pick a couple of them for your clients. That's, to me, is totally not feasible. It's wasting a lot of time, a lot of resources, a lot of battery, and just not workable for me. I know the technology is there, which is really awesome, but people may be using it the wrong way, in a way. And maybe you call me old school or the old type of photographer. I prefer to speak to my clients. I prefer to have the conversation, build up the relationship there, build up the trust, and click the shutter as and when I see fit, rather than just relying on continuous focus all the way. Like I said, yeah, we have the technologies now, but not necessarily you have to use it, right? This is something that a lot of beginner photographers always make, yeah, is that camera manufacturer advertise, you know, these fantastic features, super cool eye detect, very accurate, real-time eye CAF, whatever they call it these days. They advertise it, they make it sound so cool, right? You know, you got to try it, you know. And but the fact is, you know, once you get into the game, once you get into portraiture, you will actually find that you use less and less of it, simply because, you know, you actually want to take control, not the computer. You don't want the computer to take control. Yeah, having eye focus is cool, and you know, it helps you now, especially shallow depth of field stuff, but the combination of CF, like continuous focus, eye tracking, whatever, everything on, is not the way to shoot. Especially don't machine gun everything, you know, like that would be my advice for you, because otherwise you'd be having a bad habit of just basically quantity over quality, and you're not really anticipating. You lose the ability to actually see the moment. You know, that's what I'm trying to say. This is not just for portrait, for everything photography these days, because I see so many photographers out there are just continue shooting everything, and so, like, you know, be mindful about that, and trying to slow down a little bit. And this is another reason why I do encourage people to try using manual lenses, because you can't do it that quick. You have to do it slow. And this is the way to learn about seeing things, learn about composition, thinking about the shot more than relying on the computer and the post-production to do things. Because, like, I can highlight a few beginner errors these days for any type of photography, not just about portrait. First of all, they look at super high megapixel, super high. Reason, they can recrop and recompose after. This is the first thing that they do. And second, it's not just about resolution, the amount of detail, but for them in their head is that, oh, I can go in a little bit closer without losing too much details. That's true, but you're starting to develop the habit of, oh, I just take a shot and I can redo things later. And then and second is that all this, like I mentioned about the CAF stuff, they overshoot, they just shoot with huge amount of quantity, and that is not effective, and also like creating so much more work for you in post and for storage. And then you also making your, if you don't use silent shutter, yeah, you make your subjects feel nervous because all they can hear is that. It's horrible for a client to hear that. Is not very good. And I don't know about, maybe you're different than me, and but wherever, if I'm being photographed, I hear that all this stuff is almost like, oh gosh, man, like a paparazzi, and they're trying to step away from me. You feel intimidated by the sound of the shutter. So to me, like, the less the better. And also, like, if you can use silent shutter, yeah, that may be slightly more discreet, but obviously there's pros and cons of using silent shutter, which is another subject we can discuss another day. But yeah, it's a very interesting way of looking at technology these days, and especially in the EM1, the OM1, the latest OM1 has so much new stuff, which is really awesome. So Gabriel also say that I basically actually answered you already. Do you use burst mode or single for portrait? For my type of shoot, I use sequential, and for all my commercial job, not because I want to shoot more. It's all because because in a commercial sense, it's very different. I need to nail that shot. I can't ask my client to keep redoing certain things. So that would be not professional. So what I would do is that whenever I like a certain position, like a certain angle, I will just click a few shots. So usually 5 to 6 frames. So in my setting in the camera, I'll be using sequential low. I do not use sequential high. They're just too many. It's too fast for me. I don't need that. Like I said, the subject's mostly static anyways. They're not moving around, so I don't need to do much. Just make sure you have the shutter speed for the focal length that you employed, because this is another beginner error that a lot of people use. Even though that we have fantastic IBIS in all types of camera these days, and but the fact is, your subject can still move a little bit. And also, if you're an outdoor, for instance, you have wind blowing, you don't want to see hair blur, and you want to freeze that frame still, so you have to make sure that you have that shutter speed to do that. Usually, I'm not talking about like 1,000 or 2,000 of a second. Like 1/25th, 250th, is more than enough. You don't need any faster than that. But most of the time, if you're using a wide shutter, wide aperture, fast lenses, you don't have to worry about it anyway. And unless you're shooting really dark, so that's okay. And nowadays you can boost it to ISO 800. If you're shooting like 1.2 lenses, you can get away with basically anything anyway these days. So that's all cool. Right, and let's say. Anastas, on a wedding, I have around 5 to 8K shot, but I make a big burst during the dance. Yeah, but that's all cool. And like I said, I don't used to do that much, and but obviously different practice. And also, numbers is one thing. I may be overselling the numbers, but the numbers in weddings, obviously depending on what sort of elements within it, that could be. If I'm shooting, for instance, an Indian weddings, and there could be way more numbers that I quoted, because there are so many things going on, so I may take a lot more than usual. So, like, I'm only speaking on a very traditional white wedding, and or Western weddings, for instance, very traditional, like basically registries and ceremony, wedding breakfast, and then first dance and kind of things. It's only limited I could do with that particular things. I think the most shot that I would do is usually about confetti stuff, and then that will probably the ultimate burst moment that I would have for fast shooting. Otherwise, most of them would be fairly limited. And like I said, for any particular cases, I would take about 5 to 6 shots, and I'll choose the best 1 or 2 out, and to during calling process. This is my practice, but obviously different genre, different area of weddings could be very very different as well. So I know I quote about 2K 2.5K photos that I do for weddings, but not necessarily the case, because every wedding is slightly different. I mean, I have shot higher before, also lower as well. Some of the weddings I've done only end up with 800 shots, so it's very very different, very depending on the type of wedding you have, and the elements within it. Let's see. Hope you have some more collaboration with Charlie in the future. Enjoy those videos. I do. You know what? I miss everyone. I do, and it's unfortunately because of all this COVID stuff. I'm trying not to mention too much, and but it has affected a lot of stuff. A lot of my models that I used to work with, Charlie went to States. I think she has returned to the UK now. Sally, went back to Japan. And Zoha is very busy now, and Zoha is she's a very popular actress now. Believe me or not, she's in a Spider-Man movie, if you don't know. And so she is very popular. She's very busy now, so I don't think she would have the time to come onto the channel anymore. And unfortunately, maybe she will come in as a guest, like when I do a vlog, when I meet her up or something. And but she is very very busy lady these days. So like a lot of the people that I used to work with has gone away since COVID time. I know things are returning back to normal now, so I would probably have to scout for new talent and to come into the show, to see whoever may want to come into the show. Let me know. And it would be good to have some new friends as well. I'm pretty sure that Ali and all the others will come back at some point, and maybe just say hi to every one of you guys here who enjoyed those videos before. They did tell me they miss it, but yeah, it's all these circumstances that we're living in at the moment that didn't really make it easy for any of us. So I have to say that probably not for the foreseeable future, but hopefully in the, we can have some opportunities to collaborate again. I do miss all these human interactions. And then like for the last 2.5 years, I've been filming all by myself. I didn't have anybody to help me. Even Tracy's gone now, and so it's something that I did miss, and I'm not joking. And all this cool time that we used to have, but never changed. It's still me, and this channel is still very much the old style. Just now I have to do extra work for everything. Like I'll be the model myself, editor, filming, presenting, scripting, research, everything. Okay. Min Hai, and you say it's Sigma 56 1.4. I haven't tried this lens, and I have heard good things about it, so it should be very good. Maybe one day I'll have some contact within Sigma and I'll be able to try it. That would be pretty cool. And Kim said that you use T12 to 40 Pro for your work. Yeah, this is an awesome lens. I do use it occasionally. I don't use it a lot. I more use it for videos than anything. It's simply because that I work in lighting situations, like challenging lighting situations a lot. So the 2.8 is still too restrictive for me, and so I try to use a slightly faster lenses. So I tend to use the primes for 1.2, 1.8 lenses. It just basically a stop or two faster, and that will enable me to use faster shutter speed, or a lower ISO in any sort of given situation. So that will give me slightly better quality, for instance. So this is only me, like depending on the situations, of course. And Gabriel mentioned about 45mm 1.8, and that is an awesome lens. I cannot sell this lens any more than I already have, and because this is probably the best lens in the century. It's good value, right? Tiny, perfect for micro four third, and then it's good quality. It's good quality lens, and I love that lens. It pairs well with any micro four third lenses, and I personally love that lens a lot. I mean, if I use a 45, I will probably use that instead of the 1.2 Pro, only because it's so tiny, and it just good for street photography, and also like, you know, just good for that street portrait every now and then. If I don't know, some of you may not know that I like to photograph stranger on the street, and I'm one of those guys who would suddenly go up to people and ask them for portrait, you know, and I've done this so many times in the past, and this is still something that I train people to do, and over the last 5 years. So it's a really cool practice to build up your confidence. It's not for everyone, you know, and because I have worked with a few introvert photographers, and they find it a little bit challenging to speak to strangers. So you know, it's something that I really cannot force them. This is their personalities, and they can't go outside of that comfort zones. But for those who can, and I would suggest you to do that, just to build up your confidence on talking to people, breaking the ice, and learn to get into the person's head in a very short period of time. And this is the training that I do for myself a lot of the cases, because let's say for a lot of commercial clients that I have, and family, couples, singles, when they ask me to do a session, you know, they hire me for 1 hour, 2 hours. If I want to get the best quality photos of them, I need to know them, right? But if I don't know them beforehand, it's really going to be challenging. So like, I need to use the least amount of time to really trying to get to know them, and to get them to open up to me so that they look natural to you know, in front of the lens. And this is really critical for all my work, and I need to make sure that they have the they can present the quality, so that I can produce the quality for them. And otherwise it would just be a box standard passport photo that is very rigid, you know. To me, that doesn't look good, you know. That's only me, but for me, I will try as much as I can to present that. So like, the only way to do it is, you know, break the ice, get in there as quickly as possible, by communicating, by building up that trust, and also the to bring out the characters once they have that trust. So that is very, very important as well. Okay, so let's have a look at another one here. That's why I say that I like her look. She looks like Uma Thurman. Really? She looks like Uma Thurman? I'll tell Charlie that. I'll tell Charlie that. She might disagree though. I don't know. I don't know if she likes Uma Thurman. I like Uma Thurman. Okay, and you like Michael said you like 35 because you're Red 35. Do you know what? That is the secret, you know, Red 35 channel. And yeah, because I did like 35. 35 is my favorite focal length. That's why I use 35 as the channel name. And really something that not many people know. But yeah, you guessed it absolutely correctly. I guess it's very kind of obvious, right? You know, once I start talking about focal length and stuff like that, especially for stuff that I do, that's a bit too obvious. Okay, just before I continue, let me just show you more photographs. And so I'm going to switch off Charlie now. Let's go in another one. So let's bring us Sally. And this is the 45 1.2 Pro lens. So this particular shot, like I mentioned, I'm trying to get you in your head now about like the focal length I was talking about, like the wider focal length, the closer focal length. So this is, you know, 45 is pretty tight now. You know, in full frame, this is 90 millimeters. So you can see if I photograph Sally in this particular case here, first, for two things you notice. First is you can see the angle is very tight now. It's really focused on her, you know, her body and her head. And second, you also see the compression between her and the foreground and the background. So like in my head, usually if I use these long focal lengths, I will try to give the photograph a little bit of a layers. So like by introducing foreground blur. So like people always talk about background blur, you know, I introduce foreground blur just to give a little bit of a layers, and also a bit of magic sparks in the photo. And so this is what I do. And you know those little bokeh balls in front of her, yeah, I don't know if you see that, that is actually the metal chain on the barrier. So I basically position my lens very low, and so have those chains in front of the lens, and because they're so close to the lens and they basically completely blurred out, and then and the sun was shining on it, so all these little white thing is actually the reflection from the sun on the chain, if that makes sense. And so that's creating these sort of dreamy things, and then of course you got the background blur, and then from the pro lens. So this is another way to dress up a more ordinary portrait, and because if you just shoot her directly and without anything in the front, which is totally fine. But then everyone is doing it. You know, if you want to be slightly different, and I try to add something to it, this is what I do, and I either like position myself with something in front of it. If not, I may introduce something with something that I have in my pocket. It could be my credit card, you know, just to do something with some sort of reflection thing. And yeah, you try to be creative, right? You know, trying to be different to the norm, to other people, to other portraits that you've done, you've seen online, because you know, shooting directly these days, I think that's just a little bit too bland for me, too boring. So like, if you want to be a bit more creative, you know, you just have to start doing something extra, and this is the extra bit that I'm talking about. And by introducing just a little bit a foreground blur, you know, it makes the photos a little bit better, ever so slightly. You will probably see some more example in a minute. And so right, this is another foreground blur, right? And you're starting to see my style now. So you can see the foreground blur that I have here, which is very subtle, because she's still very prominent in this photograph. She's still very clean, very sharp in this particular case. The foreground blur is very, very subtle surrounding the frame itself. I did it deliberately because I don't want, you know, you're gonna have a mixture, so you can't have the foreground blur all the time, otherwise just too much, right? And so like you can see that I actually shot with a slightly more stop down. So like I was shooting, I think probably 2.8. This is a 45 1.8, not the pro lens. So I stopped down. You can see the background blur is not as blurred, the background, and then the foreground is on the opposite, is actually more blurred in the background, but it does give you a slightly different feel to the entire photograph, and which is actually very, very useful to give that kind of natural feeling about it. Otherwise, like once again, if you shoot her directly and then just get a clean shot, it just, you know, photograph is a still frame, right? It's not video, it's just a still frame. And but if you want to introduce that feel of that, you kind of snap that naturally without posing, by introducing this sort of foreground blur, you know, it does give you that look to it, because it's almost like you kind of sneak in and just take that shot from that little angle there. And so this is a good way to introduce that kind of feeling to it. So like but the foreground blur has many plays to it. So like, you know, the more you practice, the more you find that, oh, this is quite cool. You can start exploring different ideas, different angles and different things you can do with a foreground blur. So like a lot of people always talk about bokeh, blur, background blur, blur everything out, you know, like Tone used to say that, right? And they are missing the point of a bokeh, right? Bokeh is first of all, you know, no one knows about bokeh until like the 90s, and it's just a byproduct of a fast lens, and so that's really it. And this is not how human eyes see things, right? You know, we see things with very deep depth of field most of the time, so it's not natural. This is why people see shallow depth of field stuff as cinematic or like professional, but there's no such thing as that. And these days I think people are just overusing depth of field now, and overselling the quality of bokehs and things, you know, without actually properly understanding the, you know, how you can utilize it in photography to make them look special. And this is a perfect example here. You know, I'm using a relatively modest 45 1.8 in micro four third, which is, you know, not a very shallow depth of field lens by default anyway, because, you know, if you look at full frame equivalent, this is a 90mm 3.6. So if you're shooting a full frame 85mm, even f1.8, in those cases you get much shallower depth of field, but you're missing the point if you're using that just to shoot 1.8, get everything blur, and without utilizing things that I just showed you, and you may not actually be as creative as you can be, because you simply got drawn into the shallow depth of field effect in the photograph. So in a way, I think that Michael Four Thirds does make me think a lot more ever since I switched and to how to utilize the system a little bit better to perform better and be more creative in a lot of ways. So I think having that thought process is also very good. And so now you see, in fact, if I'm not trying to sell Michael Four Thirds, but Michael Four Thirds has made me work harder and also be more creative in many ways. And I think I have achieved it over the last 5 years. Because before, I would be like any other photographers out there, and oh yeah, I got 85 1.2L. I just shoot everything 1.2. It just looks cool, right? Have that ultra shallow depth of field look, that full frame look, and but after a while, I just find it a bit boring. Just another subject pop, 3D pop, whatever they call it. Absolutely no joy. Now I find it more fun to do things like this now, and then I find it extremely challenging and also rewarding, once you achieve the shot. So this is another photos that I shot with the 25mm 1.2 Pro. And so like this subtlety that I was talking about in portraiture is that if you want to create something that is totally blurred out, that doesn't usually work. All you ever need is just a very, very gentle subject isolation in cases like this. If I meet some of the full frame photographer, they would easily say that oh yeah, shoot an 85 1.2. You really want to get that pop in your frame. But the thing is, I have one of those 85 1.2. I had two, and I sold one, I kept one, and then I know what it looks like, so you don't have to sell me that. But the thing is, if I do that with this particular photograph, it looked wrong somehow. It just looks wrong. To me, it just doesn't look natural. Like I said, human eye doesn't see things like that, And then and also, if you get it too exaggerated, it doesn't look natural. In this case, in this particular, I did shoot at 1.2 bright daylight, I know, and but 25, it does give you that slight, ever so slight subject isolation. But I think this is the perfect kind of medium setting for me to get this particular feel of it. You don't want to over blurring the lovely yellow the autumn tree colors behind. You really want to see the leaves, the branches, and things like that. You don't want it to be perfectly in focus because you want to focus on the subject. So all you need just a little bit of blur. Of course, you can stop down the lens, but I can guarantee you, most of the full frame photographers out there, they would just shoot at 1.8, 1.2, f2, 2.8. They don't stop down to 5.6, don't they? They don't. They just shoot wide open everything, because they like that look. Like I've seen so many photographers out there that they just shoot everything wide open because they just oh yeah, I pay $5,000 for 1.2 lens. Why would I want to waste that money? I would shoot everything 1.2, right? And well, yes, if you put it that way, of course it's your money, and you think you have to make every penny worth, right? And shoot everything wide open. But to me, it's not the way. So this is another shot utilizing foreground blur, and so you can see that this is 25 1.2. I have a shot with the wall on the left of the frame, just a little bit closer to the lens, so you can see that it blur a little bit. So it gives me the direction. Yeah, this is people often talk about direction using leading lines, using contrast, using light, and to direct people's eyes. But what you may not aware is that you can also use depth of field to direct your subject's attention. In this particular case, and you can actually see that because of the shallow depth of field on the left-hand side of the frame, you direct your eyes into, the subject. Yeah, it's almost like the angle. You're kind of sliding your eye through to the right, from the left to the right of the frame. So using clever depth of field can also introduce that, and also give you that natural moment that I mentioned earlier. Give this little foreground blur, give you that natural moment. So my clients enjoy this little look because they find it very natural. It's not posing, even though it was a little bit posy in this particular one because I asked her to look at a baby and do and just angle her in a certain way. But the whole point is, you have to make that photograph look natural, and by introducing like a little bit of depth of field in this particular photograph, by introducing a wall in front of it, it gives you that straight away. And this is something that I think that it's very effective. And so another takeaway is that depth of field can also direct people's attentions, and so you cleverly using it is very, very effective in a lot of cases. Right, let me just give you another sample before I stop for other Q&A stuff. And so this particular shot here is full depth of field. So like, I shot at f8, and so trying to get everything in focus. So this is a simple shot, and so in portraiture, like a lot, you don't necessarily need depth like shallow depth of field. Some cases I just stop down and to get everything in focus, especially in environmental portrait. You don't necessarily need to isolate the subject from everything else, but including it sometimes gives you that sense of realism. And so this is very, very interesting to learn. So like for people who are starting off in portraiture and portrait photography, I know a lot of people would basically sell you, get this lens, shoot it wide open, you get the subject isolation, give you the depth of field, shallow depth of field look, and da-di-da-di-da. Yes, in a way, but then that's not everything, right? Like I mentioned, that's portraiture doesn't mean that you have to use a certain focal length. Portraiture doesn't mean that you have to isolate your subject. Portraiture doesn't mean that you can only do certain length or the body or whatever. There are many, many ways to do portraits, and to learn about different techniques, different way to draw people's attention into the frame, and it's fun. This is portrait itself is huge, is massive, and it's not as simple as just doing like what people perceive of photography. Once you get into it, and you're starting to find out, it's not just about photographing people posing in front of the camera, looking into the camera and smile. It's not just about that. It's way more than that, but it's fun. And this is why I love it. This is why I've been doing it for 16 years, because I love it. And the ability to talk to people and to learn about them is really fascinating. And I've made so many friends over the years because of these portraitures and things like that. I've made friends with singers, like celebrities. I've made friends with Hollywood directors, and I have made friends with producers, really awesome people, right? And it's incredible things to get into, because once you get into that circle, and they trust you, they always find you and recommend you to other people, and you're starting to be in that creative circle there. It's really, really cool. I love it at the sense that I get to learn and meet these people. It's just fantastic. I'm not talking about like high value individuals like I just mentioned, but even ordinary people, other people that I met from all over the world. Portraiture has allowed me to see all of these things, and to learn about the cultures, to learn about things. Sometimes it shocks me a little, and but it's cool, right? Like I don't get to travel around the world, but sometimes people come over and ask for my service, and I get to learn about them, from where they come from, the food they ate, and the stuff that they wear, the cultures and things. It's phenomenal. I this is one of the things that kept me going in the photography world, is because I get the opportunity to learn about all this stuff outside of just about clicking the shutter button on the camera. And this is really, really awesome. Okay, let's see another one. So this is one of the earlier shots that I did a few years back now, when I was doing some you can kind of see it's kind of promo shot for Billingham. And so like he's a professional model, so he's actually quite popular models back in the days, about 5-6 years ago now. He used to model for catalogs and stuff like that for different fashion brands, and so yeah, I love working with him. He's a very cool guy actually, and we had a lot of fun together when we were working in London. So really, really cool stuff. So in this particular shot, this is a actual still shot. He wasn't even moving. He's completely still. He posed for it because it's a pro, so he knows exactly what he does. And so sometimes when you get an opportunity to work with a pro, it makes your life so much easier. And I can tell you that because they know exactly what what the best angle for me actually. They just know because they know where the camera is. Then because they always looking themselves in the mirror to kind of move the body a little just to try to find the best angle for him as a model to present himself. So he knows exactly where and when he should pose certain things at a certain angle. So like whenever the camera is, he just knows and he just does it. And so when you have pros like that, like it makes your life a whole lot easier. And but majority of the case, like I said, these are obviously exceptions, and most of my clients are not professional models. I have to work with them and have to direct them in a lot of cases, making sure the angle presents itself. But you can see my style already. Most of the time I would my style is very natural. I don't like to pose too much because my clients are not professional models. So like in that case, I don't want to enforce that idea into them, making sure that they can get that kind of like catalog-y looking thing. And so for me is that I would just basically trying to be as natural as possible, get them to laugh, get them to do things that they normally do, then I just snap it. And that way that they get the most natural angle of themselves instead of being forced and look rigid and boring basically. And so yeah, that's basically it. So before I continue, and let's have some other questions answers here. How are you guys doing? And hope that it's not too boring for you guys. Hope it's educational. I love talking about portrait. As you can see that I'm quite enthusiastic about the whole thing. Because I can get a little bit crazy about portrait every time you talk to me about that particular thing. Gabrielle, right? I've booked to shoot 2 weddings at night. I'm relying on my EM1s, Mark 1 and Mark 2 on camera flashes paired with the 12 to 40 2.8 and the Sigma 30 1.4. Any advice? Right. Okay. Well, that's a pretty good setup you have there. The EM1 Mark 1 may struggle a little, and because obviously that you can use the on camera light to assist in focusing, but the Mark 1, I think the sensitivity on the AF is not as low as the Mark 2. I can't remember exact figure now, but I know the Mark 2 was -4 EV and something like that, 3 EV, -3 EV. I think the Mark 3 is -5 EV. The latest OM1 is -6 EV, so like it sees a lot better in low light, and but the flash always helps because you kind of have this blast shots to let the camera sees the subject, so to adjust the or using infrared, right? Depending on what sort of flash you use. If you use the Olympus one and the FL 900R or something 700R. Yeah, it has these infrared bursts, and then so you just kind of shine it through. You can so the camera can focus properly at night time. So that's fine. 12 to 40 is okay, and 31.4, of course, you got a 1.4 there, so you got a pretty fast lens there for low light stuff. So that should be okay. I don't see any problem there, and depending on what sort of thing you're going for weddings, and because if you want to get the ambience into the scene, you may want to use second curtain and to do the flash shots, but to just be aware of the shutter speed, just to make sure that you don't introduce too much of the motion blur there, and hold your camera as still as possible. That's what will be my advice for using on-camera flash, because a lot of the cases, if you're using TTL and when the flash just bursts into the scene, the subject will be very correctly exposed, which is what it's supposed to be. But imagine that the light intensity that bursts into the subject's face is usually a lot stronger than what the ambient is. So that means that whenever you pump a flash into the subject, you will find that the background, the ambient, will be completely darkened, so like you won't be able to see anything behind. This is the problem using on-camera flash. One way of getting into it, you can bounce flash, but you depending on how high the ceiling is or how far away the wall is for bounce light, you may lose 1 to 2 stops of light. So then you have to compensate that. But again, as soon as you introduce any sort of artificial light, you will kill the ambience, and because depending on how strong the ambient light is, if you have some DJ playing some music like some LEDs, blue, red, kind of that sort of colors, you may lose all that because of the strong flash that you have. So be mindful of that. There are ways getting around it, but using second curtain would actually help alleviate that problem, but you have to play around with it to see what sort of setting you may want. And I can't really advise you, depending, because I change my setting depending on the locations, depending on the actual the ambient lights is, and also what the setting is in the whole venue itself to determine what sort of setting I want to employ on the camera and the flash. Yeah, not that I don't use it, I use it as well, but I usually use second curtain just to absorb the ambient first before I pump the flash out to freeze the subject, so that way I can get more natural color back in. But that's a technique that you may want to practice a little bit more, and to see whether it works for you or not. Yeah, it's something that is your setup is totally fine, and you can work with that. And but like I mentioned about settings, so this is something you may want to play around a little bit just to see what whether it actually works or not. And Rob, remember to like the video. Thank you very much. Yes, that of course always help, right? Always help. Okay. A couple of years ago, I was in Thailand and used the 75 for a lot of candid portrait without bothering strangers. Yes, I mean, like I said, if you have the distance to work with, longer focal length can also get a lot of candid stuff, because you know, you can shoot quite far away from the subject. That goes with street photography as well. That's why some people use longer tele lenses to do street photography rather than wide angle and go close up. The similar thing as well. Oh, another Jimmy. Hello, Jimmy. What's the presets do you use for your portrait? Lightroom, Capture One, maybe a video about that soon. Okay. What sort of presets? I have presets. I use presets myself, and I have my custom presets, and which kind of tweak around all the things a little. Like I said, I'm going to do one example in a minute, so you can see how I work with my portrait, and so you can see exactly what's going on. So stay tuned, and it will be coming up very, very soon. But if you want me to do more of the editing stuff, and of course I can do another live or something to show you guys more in detail. Okay, let's see the next one here. Minhai has Panasonic 10 to 25, 25 to 51.7 on 2 bodies, a whole wedding cover. You are very rich. Those 2 lenses alone are very expensive. And I'm just joking. If you need to use it, you need to use it. I mean, I have a lot of expensive lenses, and but this is why professionals are living in a very different world, because I know that there's always a debate about, you know, pro lenses being too big and heavy and too expensive, but you know, like when you're working in a professional environment, it's a different story altogether. You know, you need to work in those lighting situations day in, day out. You need to pay for those lenses, and size doesn't come into it too much because you're working, right? You know, it's not just about being portable and stuff like that. And to be quite frank, you know, the 1.2, 1.4 lenses in Micro Four Third is still a lot lighter, smaller than full frame, and more importantly, cheaper as well. And because like my full frame lenses, you know, when I was with Canon, and they cost a bomb, you know, like. And even like nowadays, if you get these latest Canon RF lenses or Nikon Z lenses, the expensive stuff, yeah, the pro lenses, they are like 3 times the price that I used to pay for the pro lenses in Canon days, and they are just ultra expensive, and I don't think I can afford them now if I go back to Canon. That's crazy. Actually, I was shooting with Canon back then, but I love to do much more little package, the EM5 Mark II, so I don't use the DSLR at all. Yeah, I have used EM5 Mark II for weddings twice, and then as a second camera, because that's the time when I was still experimenting Micro Four Thirds. So I was still shooting with Canon and Leica. So I had 3 systems in my bag, which is a bit crazy now I think of it. But yeah, the EM5 worked out really well, really well. And now if I had DxO Pure Raw back then, it would be even better, right? You know, you can shoot the high ISO and still clean it all up. And yeah, I think you know, I may actually go back to some of those images and rework it to see what it looks like, and it might actually blew me away. Oh, Marsha, hello Marsha, how are you? Nice to see you from Southeast Florida. Okay, Michael. So I have a multiple of 1.5 times on all my Fuji X mount lenses and all the Fuji crop sensor cameras, and to get the actual millimeter distance, thanks again for your time and energy. You are very welcome. And yeah, like I said, this channel is not just about Micro Four Thirds, right? You know, it's about photography in general. And today's video is about portrait, and I didn't really specifically talk about Micro Four Thirds, even though I use a lot of Micro Four Thirds as an example because I shoot with this system now, so it's easier for me to convey that message. But you know, portrait is portrait. A lot of the stuff that I talk about is relevant to whatever format you use. It doesn't really matter. So hopefully that is something you find useful and helpful. Yanis, finally someone speak about storage. It's really important for me that ORF are 20-25 megabytes. Yep. And you know what? One important thing about the OM1, I know people were expecting higher megapixel camera, like the GX6 for instance, it was 24 megapixels, and I was happy they kept it at 20. I really was. You know what? Yeah, my entire computer setup, my whole storage, everything, my workflow, I can time myself how quickly I can churn out a project, and it's all based on 20 megapixel. People who's not in the commercial world, not professional, may not appreciate as much as I do, but I have a lot of photo shoots. You know, I've done 2 this morning, so I already have about 1,200 shots that I need to process. Yesterday I did another 500, and the day before 300. So like every day I got hundreds of photos coming in, right? An increase of 1 megapixel resolutions can change my entire workflow completely, and it's crazy, you know. And to be quite honest, I never ever complained about 20 megapixels. You know, my client never really complained about. I think, to be quite honest, a lot of my requirements for my client, commercial ones, are asking for 8 megapixel output. 8 megapixels. So I have 20. I got plenty. You know, it's not that I don't need 40 megapixels. You know, like not what everybody else is talking about. You know, like, it really depends on usage. You know, if I'm in a different environment, if I have to shoot for billboard, you know, if I have to shoot for certain things, like certain commercial projects, yes, maybe I need more higher megapixel stuff to satisfy that. But my clients are not those clients, right? And for my own self, for my own photography, I don't need high megapixel either. You know, like I print my photo books, I print my stuff. I don't print big stuff, so I don't need high megapixels. You know, I'd rather work with stuff that I have, and 20 is plenty. And so I was really glad that Olympus didn't up the resolutions. They may do in the future. You know, if they do, you know, of course I've been forced to upgrade my game, and but to be frank, you know, like, unless my clients tell me to do otherwise, and I'm gonna keep this game on for as long as possible, because like my entire backend system is tailored and optimized for this sort of resolutions, and I can churn out quickly, I can process them quickly. I know exactly how much time it takes to process my 800 photos, for instance. You know, any sort of minute changes can completely derail my whole system. And even though I've got a fairly powerful computer, but like, even so, you know, any sort of changes can be very have very high impact on my system. And yeah, storage is absolutely one thing, because yeah, you even though storage can be relatively cheap these days, but yeah, it's more cost than anything else as well. And yeah, you know, business is money, time is money. Everything is money. So I need to make sure that I can have the return on investment, right? You know, we want to invest little and get high returns. So I can get more profit in between so I can spend. And this is the game of professional photography. Okay. How about 1/8000 I can crank up the HH1 with no hair blur. Talk about earlier about the hair thing. That's quite funny. Okay. Just outside the comfort zone is good. It is learning zone. So go further and you get into the panic zone. You're no good. Comfort equal no learning. Learn is good. Panic no good. Yes. And in a way, panic is good in a way. And because without panic, you really don't know where your limit is, right? And because like it's quite hard to gauge where, you know, what your limit is as a photographer. You don't know, you know. Yeah, you can step outside the comfort zone doing something crazy, and but you don't know whether you actually hit that limit until you start panicking. that's my view. I got panicked a few times, and because I want to push it exactly how I can do things, and I failed miserably, and I'm not joking. So this is something that, you know, you better in mind as well. And obviously I'm not trying to ask you to do something really dangerous and things like that, but you know, in terms of creativity wise, doing certain effects and stuff like that, yeah, go ahead, try something crazy until you to the breaking point that you can't do it anymore. Then you know that, okay, that's probably it, you know. I think I just crossed the line a little bit. Then you know. And but you know, finding the limit is good as well, because then you know exactly how far you can go with your photography. And then that line also changes as well. The goalpost changes because as more experienced you become, you may actually find that it's easier for you to do certain things, and you may want to, your comfort zone is expanded. That means your panic line is actually moved further away from you because you can now do things better. So just be mindful about that as well. So that, yeah, that's why you always have to keep shooting. Do you know the better way to improve is to keep shooting? Thorn say, I thought Red Dead 35 was taken from my film days. It was kind of, well, yes, it is, you know, and but 35 is the focal length, so you can kind of guess is full frame or film, you know, is the same format, 135. I never called them full frame. I have to call it full frame only because people may not understand what I was talking about when I say 135. You know, people just don't even understand that term anymore. 120, you know, like medium format. You know, they already know it's medium format. But even digital medium format, not exactly 120 anyway. The negative size is way bigger than the sensors. So, yeah, it's not right. People just, I don't know, confusing. To my old age anyway, you know, I'm too old for that. Okay, John B is saying, I think you're referring to the foreground blur I was talking about earlier. And yes, they use it in movie a lot because when you have this layer depth of field in front, on, and behind your subject, you can create that kind of like really cool cinematic look. Everything about cinematic now. Cinematic is such a big word these days, overselling it, you know, and but it works. You know, I said it to my client too. Don't tell them, and say that, yeah, it looks cinematic, it looks good. Whenever they hear the word cinematic, it's like, oh, that's professional, yeah, that's good. People, I got to do that because otherwise I have to spend time explaining to them. So like, I just use one word and that just convince them, yeah, you look cinematic. Oh, wow, cool. Excellent. Okay. Ink. Oh wow. Thank you. Yeah, he's from Hong Kong, and it's 5:30 in Hong Kong, and wow, it's very early. Thank you for your support. You might be sleeping by now when I'm talking, and really, really, really awesome for you to be here and supporting me this late in Hong Kong. Thank you very much. Janius and Janius, and you won't like large print at 1.2. Depends. People might like cinematic look. You see the word coming from now, cinematic. You know, every time I talk to my clients, they like cinematic. Yes, good. You know, even like iPhone now have a cinematic look, a cinematic mode, right, in videos. It's all because of depth of field. They should call it the tonne mode, right? Tonne mode is more appropriate. You know, you can set it to extreme, you know, just blur everything out. You know, there's a tonne mode now. It's really cool. Okay. Oh, Michael just shot a F-64 and asked for more, and for more, I say in yours. Really? Okay, which camera and lens did you use for the street portrait of the male model? Oh, you want to find out what that is? That's an early project that I did before I switched to Michael Four Third. Good eye. So it's not from Michael Four Third. That is actually from a Leica. That's a Leica M240 it's MP240. The lens I used was 50 Summilux. Is a 51.4 for that lens. So that's a very different lens, different character. I could actually achieve the same look with slightly different compression, of course, using a 45 1.2 and also the 75 1.8 on the Michael Four Third. I just have to step further away from to achieve that same look in a way, or same feel, not look. Yeah, it's very interesting, right? And John B's like, cinematic. This is a commercial trick, right? You know, just to tell your client everything I do is cinematic. They will love it. They will love it. I'm telling you. And so you don't have to do things anymore. Just say cinematic, and you're in the game. Right. Okay. That's last 3 photos before I jump into today's, and the final part of this live stream is my editing. So stay tuned for that. I'm gonna do you my live edit in just a moment. So I'm gonna show you a couple of more photos first, and I can talk a little bit more and about my photos. And now you can see another, guess what? Foreground blur. Yes, I'm talking about foreground blur once again. So you can see, let me just shrink it down a little bit, maybe just a tad too big in this case. Foreground blur give you that dreamy look, give you that texture, give you that sneaky look, and give you the tunnel of vision, right? Give you the direction to the person you want to photograph. So now you learn something. It's not just about background blur, and then foreground blur is just as important as a background blur. And you can now see how you can utilize, with a little bit of creativity going on, just put something in front of the lens to create that look and create that directions for your viewers, and also like it looks cinematic. Okay, and let's go for another one. So I'm overselling cinematic now. I'm gonna start changing the channel name to be Cinematic 35, and I think that might be quite cool, right? So, and this is another shot. So like, this is a box standard portrait that most people would do. No foreground, no background blur, just bang, just straight shot. And yep, simple window light. And this is it. You know, this is how you normally see portrait these days, because majority of people just shoot things like this straight on. The subject goes straight into the eyes or straight into the lens. Nothing special. Not saying that this photo is not special, but what I want to say is that you need to give a variety of shots. So if you give something too many times within the series of photos for your clients, they will look the same and they look boring. So like, for all my deliveries to my clients, and I always have a variety of shots, variety of styles, variety of a combination of like normal straight portrait, some with the foreground blur, some with the background blur, some of the like everything in focus thing, you know, and so a whole mixture of everything. And that way you create a good amount of styles, so that it makes the whole thing more interesting to look at when they put into album or photo books, so they can see like where they are, what they're doing, and then some bit is just like more intimate, like slightly more closer, something that is slightly more natural. Yeah, it's good to have a good portion, like a whole combination, because like I said, otherwise your clients will keep seeing the same photo again, just different angle, different lighting, different background. They don't want that. It's boring. To me, it's boring. I hate shooting things just straight on all the time because the only thing that kept me working as a portrait photographer for the last 16 years is because I can create, right? I don't want to just do passport photos, and if they keep shooting straight on, they will all be passport photos, and I don't want that at all. So like by having a good variety, you have that creative freedom. You can do everything you like, and you can start mixing things, exploring new things, trying new techniques. And one thing I haven't even showed you yet is to use live ND on the Micro Four Thirds system, especially on the Olympus, to do my portrait. I mean, I have used excuse me, I got something in my throat. So like, I use live ND to do creative shots, and that works as well. And which is another thing that I quite like the Olympus system, because it has the live ND features in photo, and that works in multiple cases. And obviously, it's isolated cases. I can't use it, like, again, not all the time, but whenever I can, I will try to do that to create that kind of unique look in the photograph when other things are moving, when my subject is still in the middle of the frame. It looks kind of really cool, and almost like cinematic. I keep using the word cinematic. One of those movies when you see that the subject kind of like standing really still in the center of the frame, and everything moves and suddenly come to a stop motion and slow. You kind of that feel of it, and I don't know if it makes sense, but I've seen a lot of movies like that. So or maybe because I shoot videos as well, that's why I infuse the idea into it. But it's cool. Trust me, it's really cool. If I can find an example, I'll try to find one for you later. I think I got one. So this is the wedding, a wedding shot. So someone was asking wedding earlier, so hopefully this will give you a slight idea on the wedding side. And so this I used to remote trigger a speed light in this particular case, but you can see that the ambience, I did not kill the ambience, right? And this is important. You need not kill the ambience, because once you kill it, the shot would become very, very 80s. And so in this case, you can see all the red light, all the blues and everything are still there, and I need them to be there. So like this was shot with second curtain with the so I would try and absorb as much light as possible. I bumped the ISO up because that's the only way to record the colors. And even though I have the flash, right? People think that, oh, I have the flash, I can tone down the ISO and things like that. No, I don't. I actually use high ISO to absorb as much ambience as possible, because that's the only way to actually record both lights, the artificial air, the light that you want to add together with the ambient lights together. So like this particular shot, I think I was shot at 3200. Yeah, even though it doesn't look that dark, but I need to capture those lights, and so I was shot at ISO 3200, and I was shooting at the maximum sync speed I was allowed to, which was 250 a second, or 320 now. I can't remember. What is it on the Olympus? I can't remember. I used the maximum anyway. So this is what I did, and you can see that from the speed light, the actual kind of sun star looking thing, and so I did stop down the lens to get the depth of field as well. That's why I was 3200 ISO, because I stopped down the lens. This was a wide angle, as you can see, and I was using 7-14 2.8, and it's really ultra wide. So stop down to probably 5.6 in this particular shot, and 3200 ISO, 1/250th of a second. Yeah, sounds about right for this particular shot there. But like I said, I can't really tell you the exact setting, simply because your situation will be very, very different. The lighting could be different, and so you just have to do a little bit of a try and error before the first dance starts, and just to see whether that setting works for you or not. And so that's also very, very important to test. Yeah, to test before you actually make the shot, because by then you won't have time to do it. This is another weddings that I've done, and in central London, and it's really awesome. One thing I do adore about Michael Four Third, on the contrary to a lot of people say that, oh yeah, you don't have shallow depth of field. In my case, deep depth of field is cool, especially in situations like this. I'm not joking, right? You want to get everything in focus in this case, right? In a full frame, if I had to use my old Canon 16-35 f2.8, I would have to stop down the lens to 6.3, if not f8, to get everybody in focus. And then I'm not talking about just the people in front, yeah? It's all the way to the end of the stairs. And in my Micro Four Third, I stopped down to 3.5, and that's it. I actually got everything in focus. This is crazy, and I loved that. I really loved that, and the client was jaw drop. And the funny thing is, yeah, this particular photo was shown for the venue, because this is a very high profile venue in London. It's the Institute of Civil Engineer, and so like they have a lot of professional photographers shoot this venue as well. When they saw the photo, they said, "Wow, did you do that? How come everything is so sharp?" And this is from a guy, the wedding manager, who's seen tons of weddings, tons of video, like tons of other photographers' work, and they have such similar thing, but they all said the same thing. You know, like, I mean, yeah, none of them as sharp as my shot. They said, like, I usually don't see people in the back in focus. And this one, they saw everybody. They see their faces. And then this is the difference, because a lot of cases, and if you're using full frame, you know, depth of field is obviously a lot shallower. And because of the lighting situations there, people will have to either pump the ISO way up high and stop down, or you shoot ISO or you shoot at 2.8 or 3.5 full frame lens and lower the ISO to 800. But if you do that, the depth of field is very, very different. You can get the first 3, 4, 5 rows in focus, and after that it will be slightly blur, not as sharp. You can almost get it sharp, but not quite. But Micro Four Third, way everything in focus. And to me, this is the benefit. One of the benefit that people completely disregard in the photography world. They always, you know, say that, you know, oh yeah, you need depth of field, you need shallow depth of field, you need thin, paper thin depth of field, that you have to blur your ear when you do a facial shot, and that kind of depth of field. Like I said, you know, like people have misunderstood depth of field to start with. Manufacturers have oversold depth of field. YouTubers have exaggerated the effect of depth of field. Depth of field is useful for creative purposes. Remember that. Don't overdone it. Don't overkill it. You can still do depth of field, a shallow depth of field in Micro Four Third. You just have to work with different a way to do it, because ultimately you are talking about different format. You can't compare apples to oranges. You cannot do that, and you just have your own way of doing shallow depth of field in Micro Four Third system. Similarly, you have a different way of doing depth of field in medium format cameras, because the format is different. And yeah, this is something that people need to understand. And similar to Michael, who shoot Fujifilm, right? You know, Fujifilm is another format. You know, the depth of field will be slightly different, so you have another way of achieving similar look and similar depth of field. There is no right or wrong answer anywhere. It's just a different way of working, and each has plus or minuses. I'm not saying Micro Four Third is best in the world, of course not, you know, but for the stuff that I do, like I showed you already, this type of work, you know, all the shots that you've seen so far, you've seen that I have a whole combination of shallow depth of field, deep depth of field, foreground, background blur in different sort of combinations, and you see that there's no a restriction for my creativity there, just because I'm using a smaller format. And okay, there were a couple of shots. There were shot with Leica that you saw. There one shot with the guy carrying a Billingham. So like you can see that, you know, there's no difference whatsoever. I can use any camera to achieve the way that I want to achieve. I just have to work with it. I just have to adapt to that system, adapt to that format to create the look that I'm going for. But now I'm educated in the Micro Four Third world, so I can exploit the possibility and to work with that advantages what a Micro Four Thirds system can bring me, and then work with it and achieve things that I couldn't possibly do before, and which is actually pretty amazing, to be quite honest. And if you ask me, so last shot before I start do my edit now is there you go, live ND. I found one. Live ND shot. So this is a live ND using the EM1X. I think at the time I was testing it, and this is only one of them. I've done many similar things, and so you can see the creative possibility there of using live ND for a portrait shoot. And this is phenomenal. This is really cool, and I love how the bust was blurred out and the back, and I've done similar thing with other objects, and it creates all sort of crazy stuff, and it's really cool for weddings. And then you know, you've got these sparklers and things like that. You've used live ND, you can draw things, and it's really cool. It's a bit like live compose, but live compose is a little bit slower, and you want to do it in bright daylight. Is, you know, live ND is awesome stuff. You know, people always ask me, how did you do that? So yeah, my trade secret. It's only I can do that because I'm a cinematic photographer. Okay. Okay, this is all the photo I want to show you guys today, and I'm gonna start my edit. But before I do that, let's answer the last couple of questions before I move on to the next edit bit. Okay. So let's see the next one here. Hey Jimmy, is there money to be made in the passport photos? I can do that. Ready, set. Actually, yeah, not bad money at all doing a portrait photo, but they would be boring, mate. And I have to stand there just like basically put the camera on the tripod, click. That's good money though, and easy money. But I like to create. I like to create something special. Right. Marsha, where do you place your focus point in this image? Oops, sorry, Marsha. I'm not entirely sure which image you're talking about now. I've just kind of gone through that. If you let me know which photograph, and maybe I can bring that up again and tell you. Sorry, I'm just tracking back because I usually talk a lot and then go back to the messages. And John, what a fantastic image in this, Jen. Any flash on that? Oh, the group wedding image, and where did you place the focus point? Right. Okay. So let me see. This one. The focus point is placed just behind the couple, and so I think it's the if you. I'm just thinking if I can bring it a bit closer, and oops. I actually placed right about here. If you can see, oh, I don't think you can see my mouse, but just behind the couple. But you can see how sharp it is. This is all the way to the end. It's crazy, right? It's all the way to the end, and it's unbelievable how deep the depth of field is, and it's really fantastic. And love that. Note the vignette in this shot. I added to it a cinematic. I'm going to use that word every single time now. If everybody asks me questions, it looks cinematic. And Anastas, a lot of people that can't shoot just buy full frame and 1.2 lens to get a very shallow depth all the time and everywhere. That's marketing, right? You know, and they've done a fantastic job at marketing those stuff, and of course people are going to buy that just for that reasons and nothing else. Okay, right, and thank you very much for this. And now I'm going to go to edit now. So if I'm going to jump onto my actually just go back to Marsha's question. Right, the reason I focus behind the subject is because you know how depth of field works, right? And it's got the depth of field before and after, so you just have to kind of find a medium point where the focus is, so you can bring the background and the foreground in focus. A lot of the people, a lot of cases, they will focus on the subject, which in this case will be bride and groom, and then let the depth of field work the back end. Yeah, it's not very effective, right? Don't forget that things also work. I mean, in front of the subject itself as well. So depth of field doesn't always talk about the back; it's also the front. So by finding the best spot for the actual focusing point in deeper situations, will help dramatically to achieve shots like this. And it's something that landscape photographer will know much better than I do, because they work with like deep depth of field all the time, so they know how to maximize the effect using a smaller aperture setting, and where to focus to get everything in focus. For instance, of course, in many cases they will focus stack, like macro photography for instance. But sometimes if you want a quick shot, they would do that, and this is exactly what I do in weddings. And because wedding, you don't have the time to wait for it or focus stack for it, for that matter, so you just have to work with the depth of field, like for that particular spontaneous moment. So you need to make sure that you get the point right and you can get everything in focus. So hopefully that answers your questions, and it's awesome. So now let me jump onto edit. Okay, right, there we go. So let me just go to my sun. Right, okay, let me just close up some of the windows so I can see exactly what I'm doing. And so let me just close off some of the stuff here. Sorry, I'm just have to make sure some of the windows are not overlaying exactly what I'm doing at the moment. And so I can see. So I can see that this is a raw photos that's opened up on Lightroom. This is the latest version of Lightroom. And because I'm silly enough to pay for the subscription, but anyway, because that's what I've been doing, and I'm obliged to continue simply because my entire bloody library is here. Anyway, to cut the long story short, let me just edit this photo, and so give you an idea how I can do things, right? And so let's switch off. So you can see that if I bring up the thing here, you can see that it's actually shot with the Pen F, and I was using the Laowa 10mm f2 lens, and so ISO 400. So you can see that this image is nothing special. It's very ordinary, very flat, and we actually went out for a long walk. It's quite a few miles away from home, and then just walking down here and just testing the lens at a time. And but I want to edit this photo so you can see exactly what I usually do for things like this. So for a start, you can see that this photograph is very flat, and of course most raw photo will look fairly flat, and the color temperature doesn't look quite right. It's look a little bit on the cool side. So what I would usually do is to basically, if I just go in here to start adjusting the skin tone, because skin is important, right? And but the ambience also looks a little bit too cool by itself anyway. So let me just adjust a little bit. So we will bring it the temperature just a little bit higher, and that already looking fairly okay. Now look at this. So a lot of people were just simply looking at just 1 second, and bringing the highlight boosts the shadow, right? So what if I do that? So just do that. Woo! Book a shadow. Too much. So there, it looks okay. That might be what people would do. And then let me add a bit of contrast. So yeah, that looks already quite good. And maybe add a little bit of vibrancy, not saturation, simply because you don't want to oversaturate the skin tone. And now look at it again. Still looking a little bit on the light side, and that looks slightly better now. So you can see now. You can think that looks alright. It looks probably acceptable for a snapshot. Probably okay for a iPhone-like photo. Probably okay, but I want to improve that further. Right. So what do I do normally in this sort of scenario? Let me just reset the photo first. So this reset now, and so first of all, I will look at how much it's been clipped in this case, because I can see these skies already been clipped, and quite easily, because you can see on the top of the histogram here, you can see this bit here is already clipped. You can see all this stuff here highlighted in red basically means there's no information there anymore because it's gone overexposed. And so what I would do is just to see how much it's been clipped. By turning the highlight all the way down doesn't give me much information there. So what I want to do is to double click, just reset the highlight to underexpose the shot to see what it looks like. So let's do that. So you can actually see that you can probably get quite a bit back by actually adjusting the exposure. So like instead of turning the highlight all the way down, which affects everything, you can see that by underexpose the sky by 2.8 stop, you can almost get the whole sky back, apart from some of the clip bit that you can't see. So, but how can you do that? Right, in Lightroom, it's actually pretty awesome, especially since last year they added some sort of AI stuff. So now you can actually select the sky, pretty much like Lumina, and then so you can select the sky, and now the sky is highlighted, and just the sky, and you can underexpose the shot by 2.8 stop. Okay, right, thereabout. There you go. So now you can see that the sky is basically come down a little bit more. And if you want to add a little bit of color in the sky, you can boost the saturation a little bit more, get a bit more blue if you want, and a little bit more, maybe a bit more contrast just slightly, just to get a little bit of cloud structure back in here. Do not add texture in the sky because you highlight any kind of noise in there. So now it looks like it's pretty cool here now, and so the temperature still look a bit wrong here. So let me just go back to the temperature. Look, basically, let me just go back to the face. Like I said, skin tone is important. Let me just add this back in. Right, okay, that looks just about right. So, but you can see his face looks odd. It's because, you know, like this artificial thing here, you can see that the highlight bit, it covered a little bit of his face. Right, here's the trick as well from Lightroom, is that you can do subtract. So what you need to do is click a subtract layer, and now select the subject. So now the program would basically trying to find the face of the person in there, and now it selects it and it deducts it from the actual sky mask itself. So now the whatever I just did doesn't affect the skin tones anymore. So now it's back to normal. You can see that it's all nice and happy. That's good. So now I want to close that mask and go back out. It looks better now, isn't it? But the temperature is still a little bit wrong. So let me just go back and add a little bit warmth into it. Get the colors back in. Right. Okay, now that looks better. So this looks almost there, and let's see if anything else I can do. Right, don't forget that there's no sharpness being improved in here. So let me see. It's quite. I think I stopped down the lens quite a bit in this one, and so let's go ahead and adjust the contrast and all the other stuff here, just to get the rest of the stuff good, looking better. And so I'm gonna work around here. Bit of the shadows, a little bit of the textures. Right, don't worry about the texture at the moment because I don't want too much texture on actually my son's body. I will do that in a minute. So sharpening, I don't, well, now we got DxO Pure Raw, so I actually let the DxO Pure Raw do the sharpening for me instead of actually adjusting in here. But let's go ahead and do something. So when you turn on the sharpening, you can actually see that there's a big difference here. If I can actually go in a little bit more. Right, I can show you what each slider means. Right, you can see that if you do sharpening too much, you can see all these horrible textures starting to appear in the entire photograph, simply because it's sharpening everything, including individual grain or digital dots in the pixels in the photograph. So all you need to do is to introduce a mask by moving this slider here. This slider will basically tell you exactly where to stop sharpening. So the more you do, the less those little dots are. So now you can see that if I turn it just before the slider of the sharpening, and you can see that it now only sharpens the edges in a way. But you can still see some of the dots here, which doesn't look very nice. So what you need to do is to set the radius. So you might want to turn it down a little bit, details a little bit more. And so now you kind of get almost there. So yeah, it's okay. But don't forget that it looks not very sharp at the moment, only because this is up at 400% at the moment. So like it's more about pixel peeping. So if I go back in, and go back out a little bit to 100%. So this is more like it. So it looks pretty okay here. It's got a little bit of artifact there, which I will correct later. And so now, you know, these masking things, I can also do that for the person. So what happens is, if I select a new layer by just selecting the subject, so I can see that it's going to be highlighting just the subject itself, which is another cool features about all this AI stuff. And now I can just locally adjust Ashton. So now I can turn turn my son a little bit warmer still, maybe get a little bit more colors and a little more contrast when you do that. So just ever so slightly, don't overdo everything. And the texture has already increased the texture in the entire image, so I'm going to minus that so it doesn't go over the top for my son. And that looks pretty good already. I don't usually do the rest of it, and because otherwise you're going to get too much on that one. So now it's all done here. And also, sometimes if you get a very unbalanced photograph, for instance, if you want to, only if you want to, get this foreground here a little bit brighter, you can also do a gradual, linear gradient. So let's do a like this here, and then you can just basically pump up the exposure. Go up the shadow, bring up everything, get the contrast back in, move the highlight a little bit down. See, there you go. Right, you can see the difference here. Let me just turn off the layer. Ooh, now the foreground is completely brightened up. But then you see this thing here. You see my son's leg. Once again, my son's leg is brightened up because of the gradual. So what I do again is to subtract my son again, and there you go. Look, can you see the difference? Just the leg. So now I've got a balanced photos. And obviously I'm just showing you as an example. And to see how you can utilize Lightroom, inside Lightroom now, to do this sort of thing. I rarely do that in Photoshop because it's just slightly more intuitive on Lightroom, and I find it just easier to do edit like this. Any other heavy liftings like cloning and stuff like that, I won't do it in Lightroom because for that Photoshop is definitely way more effective than this, and I can find that this is actually easier and more effective on this AI stuff that they're doing now on Lightroom. So it's pretty awesome to do that. So this is how I would turn from this, you know, compare this to this. Isn't it cool? Isn't it just cool? The whole transformation is significant there, because, like, you know, the original, the sky is basically completely white almost. You can't see much there. The colors is very dull, and there's not much of characters going. And as soon as I edit it, and you can see everything just pop right back in. And it's very, very significant, the changes. And there are other corrections obviously I haven't mentioned, and but you know, generally I don't touch too much in this upright thing. If I shoot a lot of straight line with the background, I'll probably do that. And noise reduction, I don't need to do that if I use Pure Raw these days, and so I'll always leave it off. And there are some obviously fringing, you know, there are some in here, but not very much, so I don't need to do much. I can probably just get rid of them slightly, ever so slightly. You can see that's already all gone. And but yeah, so that's it. This is it. And if I want to change it to a slightly more filmic look, I mean, I can do so by basically using Film Pack or Nik software to do that, and which is actually awesome. I have my own preset, which is doing completely different things altogether, but I think I probably won't have time to go through that this time, and I will do that in the next live stream for edits. Hopefully that I will have more time to do that. So let me just go back to this to see exactly how everybody is. Rightio. Okay, so how is everyone? Hopefully this is okay. I'm just going to get back comments and back here. Right. Okay, Jimmy here. If we want to share with you some picture of our portrait, how we can do that? Maybe that you can judge and advise about our pictures. Very good point. Right, you can email me and I can use it as the next live session. We can actually go through it together. That's totally fine. Let me just type out the email address that you may want to submit your photo to me. And so let me just type it out. Where I'm going to find the typing thing here. Just 1 second. How do it add text again? I don't know. I have no idea where I'm going to add text. 1 second. Okay, found it. Okay, I'm going to add text. So, red35photography@gmail.com. So you can add this. So you can email your photograph to this email address and label portrait, because I do have a lot of emails coming through my inbox. So by labeling portraits, and I'll know exactly what that subject is, and I will just group them together. And so then I'll probably bring up some of the photos so we can have a look at it together next time. So this is pretty cool. You can note down this particular email address, and something that I would like to promote, of course, and help you guys with your photography as much as I can, as much as I can afford to do that. And don't forget that, I also have my job to do as well. And but I enjoy this. This is part of fun, and I would love expand the photography family, the community, to everyone, making everyone enjoy this hobby. If this is not your professional jobs, it's all fun. It's all fun. Okay, and I think I have enough gear. I have around 5 Fuji crop sensor bodies and 4 Nikon cameras, 12 X mount lenses, plus more lenses for my Nikons and more. Okay. Well, one thing you haven't got is Olympus. Buy one Olympus. I'm trying to sell you Olympus, Michael. I'm trying to sell you Olympus. Okay, what would you do? What would you do? What should I work for on this spring and summer if I want to become a professional photographer? Work out what you enjoy doing. That's the first thing. Because you got to have the love and motivation to be a professional. Because professional jobs can be repetitive, can be boring at times, and you need to do it in a way that makes you happy and makes you kind of continue doing it on a daily basis. Because if you want to become a professional, first of all, you cannot disappoint your clients, but more importantly, you cannot disappoint yourself, right? You want to make sure that everything you do is worthwhile, and so it's not easy, just like any businesses, and the start of any career can be daunting, can be lengthy, can be demotivating. So you really need to have the drive and the energy and the fire in your belly to do that. But working out what you want to do, like whether you're going to be shooting weddings or portraits or anything really, because any photography can be professional. You can sell images, right? And those are professional and work. So work out what you want to do, what you really enjoy doing, and what your strengths are. Because some people, like I mentioned, some people may not be as good as a communicator, for instance, and not suggesting you are, but if people can't communicate with clients, and that can be a barrier for certain type of photography. And likewise, some photographer may need the patience, and I'm simply not a patient person, so I can't sit there for hours and doing things, and so I can never be a Nat Geo photographer, because I just don't want to sit for hours waiting for that one shot. And street photography is as much of a patience as I can afford to give. To wait for that moment. But for wildlife like that, I don't think I will have that time to do that. Maybe when I'm a bit older, when I retire from photography, when I have all the time to myself, then I may be able to do that sort of thing. But at the moment, my goal is to obviously to do as many jobs as I can as a professional, and because this is my living, and also just to be as creative as I can. And I think that I am by showing you all I just showed you, earlier in this particular live stream, to show you my work, you can see that I totally enjoy creating things and always trying to break the rules that I put to myself, and trying to bring in new rules, and then trying to create something new every single time. My photography has evolved over the years, and this is something you also have to bear in mind as a professional. You cannot always stay with one style. You have to keep evolving with the trend and learning new skills, and so I can talk about professional photography for a long time because I mean, obviously I've been there and I know the ups and downs of it. So maybe it's something that I could do another live stream some other time, because I don't want to bore the rest of the people here. But anyway, so it's pretty cool. So I think that find out what you want to do and just keep practicing it until to the point that you think you're good enough to do it. Then yeah, go for it. I would totally encourage you, if you ever need any help, any guidance, any pointers, feel free to drop me an email if you want to, and if I have time, I'll certainly reply you, and to see if there's anything I can help you. So that's all good. We're all photographers, we're all friends, right? As long as you think that. And Lucy, and get good at business. Even a mediocre photographer can make coin if they are good at business. That is actually pretty true. It's people's business at the end of the day, and that's why you see a lot of not so good photographers out there and making money, and that's all good as well. But once you become really good, once you gain the trust of your clients, you can make a lot of money. And it's a competitive world. Let's put it that way. It's a competitive world. But if you have that determination, that drive, and you're really good at it, and you become perfect in what you do, yeah, the sky's the limit for you, mate. The sky's the limit. Marsha said the group wedding image is my favorite. Outstanding. Thank you, Marsha. Thank you. And that's actually one of my favorite as well. And I've won competition with that shot, and that's how interesting that is. But still, like I said, you can still win competition with the Michael Four Thirds image. People say no, you cannot win anything with Michael Four Thirds because it's just a rubbish format. Even though this is not just about Michael Four Thirds, I have to say that. I'm obliged to say that because I'm a Michael Four Thirds shooter, right? I have to say that. It's just to satisfy myself, to promote Michael Four Thirds. I'm a photographer, that's bollocks. Okay, and John, absolutely agree. And the black and white, great image. Thank you very much. And well, that brings to the end of today's live stream, and I'm really glad to see you guys. And I have another video shoot tomorrow. I've done all my photography this week, and tomorrow is video only. And so I'm going to be out with a client shooting her promo video. That's going to be fun, using my new OM1 with the new video features, and hopefully that is going to come out really good. And so stay tuned. I may bring that into one of my videos in the future. And I still have a lot of stuff to do, a lot of videos to do. So this is really, really awesome. And as I'm enjoying every moment of it. At the moment, I don't have much time to film YouTube videos at the moment because my job is packing in, and which is a good sign, because I've been waiting for my jobs to come back in since the lockdown. So it's all good. But I really, really enjoy all of your company today, and all the questions that you asked me. I hope it's not too boring, and I know this is not for everybody because it's a very special area, and that also requires a lot of explaining, not just simple, just showing the setting and do the shot, because portrait is not just about, it's not still, right? You talk about a live person with personalities and characters, and that's why I need some time to explain it, and I need some time to actually show you the image and talk through it before you understand the reasons behind it, and why I do such and such. If you like contents like this, please remember to leave me some comments, and also drop me an email. Leave some comment in this video after the stream, and let me know how I do and what other things you may want to talk about in the future, and any other genres, any other areas that you want to have a look at. I certainly would consider certain things, and making sure that I can satisfy everybody. as long as I can afford to do so. And talk about affordabilities, and obviously I have my link here. You can buy me some coffee if you want to. Also have to promote that too, and because every little helps in watching this video, liking it, subscribing it. Everything will help grow this channel, and it will help me making more contents like this. And don't forget, this is all coming up from my free time, but because like I said, I enjoy this community, I enjoy the photography. I would like to promote the community as much as possible, but without without you guys, I would be here. And so this is all very, very helpful. Thank you very much. And Lucy, just a last few comments here. Are you looking at getting another Billingham anytime soon? I noticed B&H now only stock 1 or 2 model. Stay tuned. I cannot tell you more because I am looking at Billingham's, and so I can't say more. I'll sign an NDA, so I can't say anything. So hint. And Anastas, don't forget the OM1 review. I am making it. I have so many requests on my OM1 review, and to be frank, I don't want to do a crap one. So I want to do a proper one. And to be honest, I have been shooting professionally now for almost a month now with the OM1. So now I have a lot of samples. I have a lot of experience. I have a lot of knowledge about the camera now. Not fully, not like an instruction book kind of way, but as a creative, as a photographer, I know certain things about the cameras now. And so the review is coming. I'm going to make a little video about it. And hopefully it's going to be cool because it's very personal and very emotional review. Give you a heads up about the OM1 because it's yeah, I don't think I've done this type of review before, but it's hopefully it's going to be worthwhile, worth your wait, because I know even some people from the OM system has asked me when I'm going to do the video, and I'm not joking. People has been asking me that. So not just you guys, not just you, Anastas, so many people, including OM system, asking me where's my video coming out. I just keep saying that I want a masterpiece. I want an Oscar-winning piece, right? You know, so just be patient about my OM1 review. You know, it's gonna be one of those worth the wait video. I hope so. Anyway, I don't want to disappoint everybody. Oh dear me. Okay. Michael is that I'm a person. I'm a salesman. I can handle a bit of everything. Good. Yeah, you gotta be a salesman at the end of the day if you want to be a business. And is Charlie gonna come back anytime soon? I missed your video with her. Yeah, I said it at the beginning of the stream. I think that yeah, I miss her too. Hopefully in the future I'm gonna get her back in for 1 or 2 videos. I'm not sure at the moment. She's quite busy herself as well. I have an adapter to do a 50 Olympus 15mm adapter to my Fuji X camera. As long as Olympus, I can forgive you. Okay, good stuff. Thank you very much for joining me, and once again, thank you. And I'm going to do another live next week, and we're going to find a topic. Remember to leave me some comments today, and remember to do this, and also subscribe if you haven't already done so. And I'm going to do a community post to give some votes to see what sort of content you want to see in the live stream. Next week we go from there, and like I said, I'm trying to pump up videos, but my workload is quite high at the moment, up my neck and up to my neck, so it's quite daunting things. I still have to process some photos I did yesterday, and so I will try to do my YouTube update as much as I can, but for the time being I would probably reduce my normal video production, do a bit more live stream because I've got less time to edit, and while I will continue my background research and the OM1 video review. Anyway, I'll speak to you all later, and thank you very much once again for your support. See you all next time. Bye for now.